Welcome everybody to this month's episode rather of our Vanderbilt University School of Engineering graduate program conversation hour. So this month, I am very happy to announce that we will be featuring our mechanical engineering department here at Vanderbilt University. We have several students who've joined us on today's panel. All of them are current graduate students within mechanical engineering. So this is a great opportunity for all those prospective students out there and anyone just generally interested in mechanical engineering to really get, from a current student's perspective, what really goes on in our School of Engineering and in specific mechanical engineering. So first of all, I want to give everybody a quick introduction of who I am. So my name is Gabriel Luis. So I am the Director of Graduate Recruitment for the School of Engineering here at Vanderbilt University. Following today's event, for all of you who are interested in learning more about, applying to our graduate programs in engineering, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address, you can see it here on the icon. But for those of you, just in case, I'll just say it here. It's Gabriel, Gabriel, .w.luis, that is Luis, and then at vanderbilt.edu. So feel free to reach out. Also, there's a registration link that went out in the promotional materials too for this event. And we'll be sending out a follow-up afterwards as well on our social media platforms. Okay, so that is my introduction. Let's move to our student panelist. So what I'll do is when I call on you, please just tell me your name, your research, your area of research that you focus in, and then also add a little bit, because of the interdisciplinariness that we see here at Vanderbilt, and then, in specifics, about mechanical engineering, when you do your introduction about your research, tell us about, the different institutes that you're affiliated with also in terms of, how, just to give our viewers a better perspective of how all that kind of intertwines here at Vanderbilt. So just kind of the rundown on what you do and then how research looks in terms of the labs that you're working in. So let's go ahead and begin with David.
Hi, I'm David Zimnicki. I am obviously a mechanical engineering grad student in Dr. Zelik's lab, and I work with robotic prosthetics and rehabilitation engineering. And I guess the organizations that I work with in my research include the VA, right next to the VA hospital, and then we have the surgical clinic that works with other amputees, as well as amputee blade runners. So we get a lot of people from the local Nashville area to come in and work with our experiments to test out different prostheses. And it's really fun to engage the community in that way.
All right, wonderful. That was a great introduction. Next up, let's go with Alberto.
Hello, guys. My name is Alberto. As Gabriel said, I'm a fourth-year PhD student in our MECI department. I'm more in the thermal fluid science side of MECI as opposed to David. I work in the lab of Dayu Lee, and basically, it's kind of difficult to explain, but I make platforms for biologists to do their studies on. It sounds very simple, but in particular, right now I'm working with the Eye Institute. I make microfluidic devices in order for them to study different parts and different stimulus of retina, of whole animal retina. My research is not just that, it's very collaborative in terms of we work with biologists, we work with physicists, and I highly participate with VINS. It's Vanderbilt Institute of Nanoscale Science and Engineering. That's where we do all the characterization, imaging, fabrication, etc. of all of our micro-nano scale engineering. So yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. Miroslava, you're next.
Hi, I'm Miroslava. I'm a second year in mechanical engineering, and my research is more in social robotics, virtual reality, and effective computing. We kind of work with a few different places. Half of our research is with autism, so we do a lot of work with Triad, which is the Treatment and Research Institute for Autism here at Vanderbilt, and then also the Frisk Center for Autism and Innovation. And then we also work with long-term care settings here in Nashville for older adults with mild cognitive impairment, and just like how do we make VR and social robotic interventions for those two populations.
All right, excellent. Chibuzor, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chibuzor Fabian Ugu. I'm a fifth-year student with Jason Valentine. I work in his lab, and my research area is actually on dynamic metasurfaces for applications in visible and infrared frequency region. And metasurfaces are essentially artificial structures or materials that are able to manipulate light for different functions that materials existing in nature cannot exhibit. So we can essentially create a material that is able to uh, essentially reflect different wavelengths of light or absorb different wavelengths of light, thereby uh, coming off with different colors, essentially exhibiting different colors. So these are essentially materials that can have functions that you can't find in nature, which is pretty interesting. Most of my work is affiliated with, just as Alberto said, VINS, Vanderbilt Institute of Nanoscale Engineering. We do a lot of interesting work across a wavelength range, and yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting area.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much. And Margaret.
Hi. So yeah, I'm Margaret Rocks. I am a 6-year PhD student in. I work in Bob Webster's lab, and my research focuses mostly on medical devices and surgical robots that help make surgery safer and less invasive. And I am a part of VISE, which is the Vanderbilt Institute for Surgery and Engineering. It's a really cool institute. It's a collaborative group of a bunch of different labs across mechanical engineering, biomedical, electrical, etc. And what's really cool about my work is I get to work really closely with surgeons at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and we just collaborate with them directly. Like, I meet with different surgeons and physicians every week to kind of directly see how our research could help improve some of their procedures. So it's really fun to work with all the doctors.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for those introductions. And I mean, I think, just what's great about having you all as part of the panel is you're really able to speak to the interdisciplinariness that exists at Vanderbilt in terms of all the different research areas that exist just within mechanical engineering. And so I think it's great that you are able to provide those perspectives to today's discussion. Let's go ahead and begin with another question, which is like, all right, so why did you apply to graduate school? So kind of what was the deciding factor for you to want to go to graduate school? And feel free just to kind of answer at your own will.
I think I can jump on that. So for me, when in my second year of undergrad, I actually never envisioned going to grad school. I never thought about it. I had no interest in it. But then I got an internship at my undergrad at Fisk University, then to work on carbon nanotubes. Single wall carbon nanotubes, and I read into the applications of these materials and how a single strand of carbon nanotube is very durable and has a lot of applications. And that got me at least started in research. I got interested in research, and then I believe it was the summer of my second junior year that I got an internship to work with Jason Valentine in his lab, and got introduced into nanomaterials and nanophotonics and optics in general. And yeah, I saw potential applications that what we can create materials, like how we can create functional materials to do completely different things that we cannot envision. Like imagine a repeatable application of my in my area is say, what's the word that I'm looking for? We can create materials that can essentially hide or shield whatever is behind them from the path of light. So if you think of invisibility cloaking, we can create materials to do that. We can also create functional materials like that you can use for your pixelated devices like your laptops, your phones, that essentially work based on really low power and will take the resolution of all of our gadgets to the next level. So all of this, when I started like really learning about this, I got really more and more interested in research, and as luck would have it, I got to come back again to work with Jason for a second time, for a second summer, and I think I just got carried away with how exciting the field was, and yeah, that was how I decided to apply for grad school, and that brings us to today, I guess.
I can answer that too. I also, grad school wasn't really on my radar really until senior year of undergrad, which was interesting because I kind of had a whirlwind application process, but I didn't go to like a big research focused school, so I didn't really know what grad school was all about. And I had been like kind of preparing to take classes and do the test to go to medical school because I was really interested in medical applications. And one of my adjunct teachers at my undergrad institution was in grad school and in a PhD program, and I started talking to her more about it and kind of learned that there was this program that I could go to that would apply medicine and engineering, which I was a mechanical engineering undergrad major. And so I was like, well, really the main reason I wanted to go to medical school was to be involved in like medical research. So kind of just senior year transitioned that to applying to different grad schools that had this like medical focus for engineering.
Yeah, I can probably hop onto that. So for a long time, I feel like I knew that I wanted to do something in sort of the prosthetics or the rehabilitation engineering realm. But I did a little bit of undergrad research myself, and I was told that the field's pretty niche and competitive in some areas. There's not a million jobs for research and development of a prosthetic foot. So it's kind of advised to me by my professor there that I'd be giving myself the best chance to get the position that I wanted by getting my PhD and really becoming an expert in my research topic. And not only just giving myself the best chance, but really getting a chance to explore it and see, like, is this something that I want to continue to do? And by doing undergrad research for a few years and really falling in love with it, I decided, like, yes, I want to continue and pursue my PhD here. And then from there, move on and keep the research going, and kind of whatever it is with human movement, I've just become fascinated with it.
I think I come from a different side. I never wanted to do academia. I didn't want to do any PhD. Actually, all my internships were in industry, but after my undergrad, I took a gap year and I went to Oak Ridge National Lab as a post-undergrad program. It's, for the ones who don't know, it's one of the most famous institutions for research in the States. And I had a great mentor, and I think that's what drove me to do a PhD. And actually Oak Ridge is very linked to Vanderbilt in many senses. So that's what drove me to apply.
I guess I can round us out. I kind of started doing research like tail end of undergrad, kind of as I need some type of experience for the resume, and ended up really enjoying it, and kind of got persuaded by some of my undergrad professors to explore grad school, and then ended up at Vanderbilt.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. It's interesting to hear everybody's story and kind of how they all got to right now. And kind of on that same question, you think made you stand out in the application? So when you applied to Vanderbilt, what is it that you think, kind of made you stand out? And then I'll kind of pair this with another question. How did you learn about Vanderbilt in the first place, or looking at applying to Vanderbilt?
I can start because I had a very unusual application process. Vanderbilt's actually the only school I applied to, which is very unusual for a graduate school. I was gonna do my PhD at another university, and then the PI I wanted to work with switched. They got a job somewhere else. So when I started looking at universities, I actually reached out to my current advisor, which I think I forgot to mention. I work with Dr. Nalajan Sakar in the Robotics and Autonomous Systems Lab. And I interned with him for a few months. And as I was interning, I did my application. So I think one thing that really helped me, and something I suggest to people, is really get in contact with possible mentors and possible faculty before you start applying, because that really gives you the strongest chance of your application being seen and being kind of pulled out of the haystack of applications.
So I guess I might answer this. Oh, go for it, Mark.
I was just going to say that my application process, as I mentioned before, was a little rushed. I didn't really have very much undergraduate engineering research experience. But since I had sort of made plans to apply to medical school, I had actually done research in a hospital, working for a neuroscientist, which I think kind of was an interesting, kind of maybe unusual piece of my application. And then from talking to my advisor about my application, because I know it's a little unconventional to not really have that much research experience, I think one thing that helped was I had really good recommendation letters. So forming really good relationships with your undergraduate professors, or just mentors who will speak very highly of you, I think is important. And then your personal statement, I think, is really, really big. Making it really unique and making it really, letting your whoever's reading the application really get to know you. And then how I found Vanderbilt was pretty easy, because I actually I did my undergrad at Lipscomb University, which is another college in Nashville. So it was kind of just I knew about Vanderbilt, but it just also happened to work out that Vanderbilt had research programs that I really wanted to be a part of. So
yeah, I can echo Margaret in that I imagine that my rec letters that I received from professors that I had studied under in their classes and at the University of Texas, and those that I had done undergrad research with probably helped. Being able to build those relationships with those professors is what helped them know me and give a rec letter that reflected me as well. And again, also, with my personal statement, I was able to share a story how at least rehabilitation engineering was kind of close to home for me, in family members and family friends that were going through their own rehab processes, and I shared a little bit of that story, and that really connected it to me, at least. But how I learned about Vanderbilt was actually that as a sophomore, I had applied for one of the summer research internships with one of the labs that's in my center, the Center for Rehab Engineering and Assistive Technology. And I didn't get in, but I was still fascinated with the work that they did. And so I was excited to apply and to join the research center again when it came time for the PhD.
I think one thing that it's a little different that I did, I did my research before applying, and I selected 2 or 3 labs that I really, really liked, and I mentioned them in my personal statement. Vanderbilt is not one of those huge public schools that I think the acceptance process, you are all in the same batch. You can pinpoint out who you would like to work with, and if things match and they're looking for a student, they would really look into you. you would really stand out in the application.
Yeah, I agree with Alberto, and I think my case was a lot more straightforward because I was lucky to find a research area that interested me, and I worked with a professor that was, willing to mentor me and guide me through the whole process. So I came back again, like as I mentioned earlier, to work with him for the second time, and I did my best. So I'd say, whatever research you're doing, or whatever you're doing, just try to do your best, and make sure that you're putting in the work, and I think eventually things will turn out good for you. And I think I sort of picked, well, I found about Vandy partly because I was in the 3-2 program. So Vandy has a 3-2 program with Fisk University where I got to spend 3 years studying physics at Fisk University, and then a final 2 years in mechanical engineering at Vandy. So I was already a part of the Vanderbilt community. So it was an easy transition for me.
All right. Great. Wonderful responses. So next question. So once you got to Vanderbilt and you've been here and you've seen what it's like, so can you tell me a little bit about, what have been your experiences so far, working in the mechanical engineering department, life as a student, as a graduate student at Vanderbilt, kind of what are some things that really stand out that are highlights for you about being here?
I'd say one of the highlights for me was I think that the conferences are one of the most exciting parts. I thought it was super fun because in 2019, we all my lab went up to Calgary for the International Society of Biomechanics conference. And I was able to present my work there for the first time. And it was really fun to just, be a part of that collaborative environment and like learning about research from all the different international society. And then I've also presented at American Society of Biomechanics, and again, the same idea of being able to share with, people in similar programs in the U.S. and actually making friends that I keep up with still. But I think an even cooler experience was that I work with prosthetics and people who have lost feet, or people who actually weren't even born with part of their limbs. And so for me, the experience of having someone, I program a foot and I give it to them to walk on, and they say, I've never had a foot on my right side, but this powered ankle is giving me the same kind of propulsion that my real foot gives me. It was a really kind of a touching moment to be there and have that experience with someone saying like, oh, wow, this actually is an entirely new feeling for me. So I'd say that's a highlight.
For me, this is maybe not super specific to mechanical engineering, but just being at Vanderbilt, maybe, and I've talked a little bit about this before, but the proximity to the hospital. I took an entire class where I was like, one of my assignments was to spend 5 hours every week in the operating room. And so like I have spent, maybe like dozens of hours observing different surgeries, and like I have close relationships with the like physicians that we work with. And I think that is pretty unique to Vanderbilt, especially just like, I walk 5 minutes over to the hospital, and I could even just like meet a doctor for lunch, like in the lobby of their building. Just like it's so easy, and I think that has like had a huge impact on my research. I think it makes my research and my work a lot better. And just like having the department like be able to facilitate that, and just like my advisor having those close relationships like has really helped me. And I think it's just really cool to have that like close relationship with the hospital.
For me, one of the coolest things, which at the beginning is the coolest time, but now I spend way too much hours in it, but still it's very cool. It's the clean room. The clean room facility is it's a clean facility, right? It's free of dust particles, and it's super necessary to make all the chips in your phones, micro devices, et cetera, et cetera. I think having to gown up, having to see that experience, it's a really cool moment as an engineer. Sometimes it's difficult, you have to put in the work, but I mean, years from now, being able to tell, hey, I work very closely making this super neat stuff, it pays off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say for me, what I really think it's cool is the fact that at Vandy, I have the option to really collaborate across disciplines. So I mean, Emmy, um, however, my research area is actually at the center of collaboration between interdisciplinary material science program, electrical engineering and computer science program, physics, and pretty much it's a whole host of collaborative efforts, which I really enjoy. I don't have to just focus on one part of my project, but I can work with people that understand other parts better than me and learn from them, and use that to build myself and my knowledge as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like really cool the collaborations we have and the relationships we have. Like I mentioned, we work very closely with Triad for autism research. So sometimes we have the same families coming back for, the multiple studies or coming back for a follow-up study. And it's just so cool to get to build those relationships with them and like, a few months later catch up with them and be like, hey, last time we talked about this and that. Like, how's that going? So we really get to see the effect of our research automatically, and then also, in the long run, kind of still get to keep those connections, which I think is pretty unique. Most of the time, someone comes in for a study and then you never see them again. So having those relationships has been really cool for me to see.
Yes, no, I completely agree with what you all said. I mean, just the type of accessibility to information on a interdisciplinary level, but then also the people you're meeting too. Mm-hmm. So the networking that the type of networking platform that I think it goes on at Vanderbilt is a very unique type of collaboration that I think is one thing that makes Vanderbilt really stand out. Next question. Tell me about what do you think of, Nashville and kind of what are some places that you enjoy going? What are things that you enjoy doing around the city? So yeah.
Well, Vandy I think it's in a great spot. It merges, I guess, being not a super big city like Nashville, but at the same time, it's growing quite dramatically right now. So you get that feeling of like, hey, there are these neighborhoods that they are very low key, but you have these little cute coffee shops and stuff, and then you have a really big party scene, which I really enjoy. But and then, believe it or not, I'm a very foodie person, and Nashville has a super great underground food scene. For me, I come from Europe, and for me, I was always thinking, oh my God, I'm coming to the US. I'm not gonna find a lot of diversity, but actually, the food scene is very awesome. It's very awesome.
I am a big fan of all of the outdoors activities Nashville has to offer. So, I mean, one of the funny things about Nashville is like it is like a bigger kind of metropolitan area, but then you drive like 20 minutes in any direction and you're like on a farm. But there's a lot of really great hiking within like an hour or two drive. I love to kayak, and there's a lot of like rivers and lakes in the area.
The Smokies.
Yeah, and like the Smokies are a few hours away. There's greenways in Nashville. You can bike or run or walk, just do whatever. And just like having all of that like accessible is really important to me. And for most of the year, the weather is like pretty tolerable. Middle of the summer, it's a little hot, but
yeah, I really love the fact that like we're so close to so many day trips. Like if you want to just take the weekend and explore a new city or explore a new place, you can do that. There's plenty to do in Nashville, but there's also we're so close to so many other places, you know, Kentucky or going to Memphis, things like that, that you really, if you want to have the opportunity to explore a lot, and then obviously there's plenty of concerts and country music and every type of music you could think of. There's usually some type of show going on. So there's so much diversity, specifically like in the music scene and in everything else that is a lot of fun to explore.
yeah, music scene, I'll reiterate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, if anything, summarizing what everyone else has said is just the diversity of the options. You could go to the park for a run. You could go to the brewery, get a beer with friends. You could try out many different types of cuisine and burn your tongue with Nashville hot chicken. Um, it's a fun city, and kind of like Roberto said, it's big but small at the same time. You can find your little local areas where you join an organization or some sort of local. A lot of people on our team do rock climbing, and kind of the rock climbing community is super big. And if after you're done climbing indoors, not far away, there's the outdoor rock climbing, and so yeah, there's a lot of good outdoor activity and live music. Can't beat it.
And it's not just country. I just want to say that it's
Right.
a lot of indie rock, like since Nashville's such a big hub for music, like a lot of artists pass through here.
And
I'm not the biggest country fan, so
yeah, not a big country fan, but Broadway, there's one place that I'm thinking of that there are a bunch of different stories, and each different story you go to is a new stage with a entirely different genre of music playing. So you can find what you like for sure.
All right. No, you summed it up really well. I think Nashville does a good job of being a city, but at the same time also having the outdoors, kind of going hand in hand with both. And I think that's something that you don't necessarily see everywhere. And I think that's really something that makes Nashville stand out. Very fast growing economy. So in terms of opportunities here, a lot of people are moving into the city for those reasons as well. But yes, no, I think you summed it up very well. Next
you
question.
Didn't mention sports.
Yes.
Sports is also good. Titans, the Preds. Yeah.
Now there's a Major League Soccer team in Nashville too, the Nashville SC. So there was actually a World Cup qualifying game last week. It was U.S. against Canada, and it was held here in Nashville. So that's in other words, sports too, a lot to offer. And Vanderbilt is the only private university in the SEC Sports Conference. And it happens to be that we have a really good baseball team. Won the national championship back in 2019. So yeah. But yes, no, I'm glad you added that also. All right, next question. So what is something you wish you knew going into graduate school that you kind of looking back at it now, you're like, oh, that would have been nice to know, that, something that you'd want to share with our listeners right now about, some advice when it comes to that?
Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So yeah. I think I've gotten this question a couple of times from friends. Like, what do you think? You wish you knew before you got into grad school? And I always want to go back to this book by Gene Kranz during the Apollo flight mission, where like the failure is not an option. When I read that book, that stuck with me. Failure is not an option. You have to do well by all means necessary. You should not fail. You need to be a perfectionist. Well, going into grad school, I thought I was gonna go with that mentality, but after failing a couple times, I've since realized that failure is not just an option. It's something you have to go through. Right? Research is not about, things don't work out as as you've planned it out to. Yeah, you're going to fail over and over again, but you just need to keep going. It's going to get tough. At times it's going to be like, the end of the road for you. You'll be so frustrated that you wouldn't want to do anything. But if you can push through that, if you keep going, eventually there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's the one thing I wish I knew, but I think now I'm getting to that point where I'm beginning to accept that that's just part of the course with grad school.
Yeah, I think one thing that I kind of knew but has really gotten reiterated is like the importance of community and of building like relationships and friendships. I started in January of 2020, so it kind of went downhill really quickly for me. And it's really only been this semester that I've gotten to meet the people on my floor, including Margaret, who's like across the hall from me, and like getting to know people outside of just my lab and really building a community of other graduate students, of older graduate students, and like, people in my cohort that aren't necessarily doing the same exact research as me, but kind of understand the process and kind of just like really building that community of being able to like text each other and be like, look, this thing worked today. And like, I'm really excited it worked. Or like, hey, who wants to go out after work today because it was not a great day. So just having like those friendships has been really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in like choosing your grad school experience, if you get a chance to tour and like meet with different labs, like I don't know, I like lab vibe is kind of important. Like, how do people talk about their experience and their advisor and their peers, and just like that will, potentially make or break your entire grad school experience, is like having a good community. So I mean, that was really important to me when I was visiting, even like before I started. Skills wise, I didn't know I was going into robotics, but I wish I had known more linear algebra. But things you can learn. I think maybe also like not putting too much pressure on yourself in the first couple of years to like have everything figured out. And I think out of this panel, I've probably been in grad school the longest, which is fine. But like this is maybe one of the few times in any of our careers that like most of our job is just like learning stuff. Like that's like our whole job is like to learn new skills and like then use those skills to create new knowledge, and like that's really cool. And so like using all of the time you have to learn things that you want to learn, even if they're outside of your research, like I have learned a lot about like graphic design and like grant writing and just things that are not like directly related to my research but are also really cool and useful skills. And taking time to prioritize that early on is exciting, I think.
Yeah, definitely some advice that was given to me when I was selecting schools, and I feel like it's good to know going in, is that a PhD program is going to be challenging wherever you go. So you want to go to a place where you feel like it's going to be fun, or at least like have some sort of supportive community. And I could definitely say that when I toured my lab, I felt like the people were fantastic, and the larger community with our mechanical engineering grad association and the friend groups I formed has been really pulling you through. And then also previously we were talking about, failure is an option, like it's kind of a requirement, but another phrase that one of my lab mates had up on her cork board was that you want to fail big and fail frequently, I believe. And because if you're not failing, you're not going into the unknown, and you're not, getting adventurous. And if you already knew the answer going into it, it's not research. You're not learning anything new if you can already tell me what the answer is going to be. So those are definitely good piece of advice that I've gotten as along the way, and so it's helped kind of calm my nerves with, whether or not, oh, will this work out? Like, it'll be okay. You're finding out something new.
A key thing that I didn't know, and I don't know if it aligns with what advice would you give to a new grad student, but I didn't know that it was possible to have kind of a mentor outside of your mentor. And I learned it recently that you can have a person that you trust that is not in your field, for my case, not in thermofluid science. Maybe they don't even know my mentor, but it's a person that I can go to and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. What do you think? Do you know anybody that has gone through this? This is a thing that I was not really sure it existed, because you never know if you're going to offend your advisor. You don't know if you're going to offend somebody, but it's a very important thing to have, because as David and Fabian have said, I fail every week until I get it right. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and Alberto, I think you make a very interesting point when you talk about maybe having somebody that you can go to that's outside of the program. And this question is not directed just for Alberto, but for all of you. Like, have you taken advantage of some of the overall graduate student services that are out there for students, whether it be career advising, or going to a life coach, or going to to student advising services, student scholar services? I guess with all the different offices on campus that exist for graduate students, plus student organizations that are also out there as well, kind of what's been your experience of or have you utilized those resources, and how important are they to what you do in terms of being a graduate student?
I think it's super nice that we have something like all the services that you've mentioned. There is a person at Vandy for engineering, a life coach that she's excellent in a word. And not many people make use of this person, and I've made very, very few use until very recently. So I think it's a super important thing, as I said before, because we all go through, or not everybody, but people have gone through what you're going through before. Having a person that is able to mediate, that tells you, hey, you need to relativize. This is not, things are going to work out at the end. This is not the most important thing at this moment. You have to look at it from a perspective. It's crucial. And Career Center, I have not used it yet. I don't think I'm there yet, but I hope I'm there very soon.
I'll piggyback off that, and I didn't know this coming in, but something that I really appreciated is we do have a really great university care center. Vanderbilt does offer counseling and therapy to all of their students at no cost. And just having that outside perspective of someone who has absolutely no horse in your race, they don't care if you graduate, how your research is going, but just care about you as a person. That's been really helpful to just kind of walk in and be like, hey, this is what I'm upset about this week, or hey, I'm really, this went wrong with my research and it's making me feel this way. And just having, like Alberto said, someone on the outside being like, it's going to be okay and things are going to work out, has been really great, especially during the COVID era, just being stuck at home, having those connections.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I mean, I think mental health in graduate school can be tricky, and it's, I mean, the conversations around mental health have been changing, I think, in a good way, but the University Counseling Center, as Mira mentioned, it's free, and it's also at the place we work, and now it's available over Zoom. And when in your future careers will you have free counseling that exists in your office, basically? I mean, that's an amazing resource, and I've definitely taken advantage of it. I know a lot of people who have, and also, like Alberto said, the life coach, she's awesome, and I know they just expanded that department. And yeah, I think a lot of people don't take advantage of the resources that we have, but they are there, and I think they are awesome.
Yeah, I can just second and reiterate that there was a period definitely where productivity was waning, and kind of my motivation felt like it was flagging, and I was my professor directed me to the student services as well, and I took full advantage of them to help work through what I was going through, and that counseling service is fantastic. I'll second that.
Yeah, I completely agree with what everyone said so far. It's really important to be able to talk to someone about whatever you're going through with your research or just in life in general. It's very helpful.
All right. I'm gonna ask real quick. So Emily Muting, which I want to give her a big shout out because she helped organize today's event. She's running the event right now, and she's also watching our feeds on our different social media platforms that we're live streaming on. And so, Emily, do we have any questions coming in that are coming into the feeds? Okay, so right now, so what we'll do is, if anybody has questions, so we're going to be here for another 14 minutes. Feel free to write out your questions into the chats that you're in right now on your platforms. Emily will catch the questions and we'll try to answer as many as we can before we conclude. So what I'll do is I'll move on to another question, and Emily, if anybody pops up with a question, feel free to let us know and we'll answer them. Okay. So here's a question. So after you graduate, what are your plans? Like, what do you want to do career-wise? And maybe the idea is not fully formed right now for some of you, but at least kind of what's the end game, the goal for you, once you graduate?
So I have a general plan for the end game, but everything is going to be in flux. But I am excited to get back to Texas. I grew up in Houston, and Houston's also got a great medical center. So I look forward to maybe getting a postdoc with a professor at Rice that works with rehab engineering, or with the Texas Institute of Rehabilitation and Research, I believe, doing more work with gait pathologies and studying how people move in a more clinical medical environment. So really excited to keep the research going and keep getting involved with people as part of rehabilitation.
All right, I'm actually going to jump right in. You will all have a chance to answer this question, but we do have a question from the audience that I just wanted to put out. So we have one prospective student who's asking, how are the qualifying exams? So this is, the GRE exam. Due to the pandemic, students that are applying for the 2022 cohort will not be required to submit a GRE score, but I guess just in general, for those of you who took the exam, I guess what are some tips that you could provide for this student?
Practice your algebra. I did not realize how out of touch with algebra I was until I started reviewing for the GRE. That would be my big one, is just like all those small tips and tricks that you learned kind of get thrown back to the back of your head, but pulling those out, it is a timed exam. So like really knowing the tricks helps. Oh, the PhD qualifying exams. Okay. Vanderbilt, ME you take 3 exams. You take your preliminary, then your qualifying, and then your thesis. I can speak to the prelim because I just took it, and then I'll let the rest talk about the qual. The prelim is challenging. The format for ME is you do a research presentation and then you answer dynamics and controls questions, or fluids and thermal questions, depending on your department, in front of a panel. It's different than anything I've done before, but like our professors have done a really good job of like supporting us and kind of giving us resources to study, and having people to study what is probably the biggest thing for the prelim. And then as you go into your quals and stuff, that's going to be a little more individual. So I'll let some of the older students talk about that one.
Yeah. As Mira mentioned, you take the prelims exam at the end of your first year, and it's really just kind of an oral exam testing your like critical thinking on the spot. How well can you connect different topics from the classes you took in your first year? The next one is the quals, or what we call in our department your proposal, which I don't know how it works on the thermal fluid side, but on the dynamics and control side, you kind of do it very late stage. So like I'm actually going to be proposing this semester as a 6th year because like I'm now like getting closer to graduation. And so it's really like you're presenting the work that you've done so far in your PhD, and you have a definite plan for how you're going to finish. So you're proposing kind of your final work. And I know that's a little different than how some of the other departments at even Vanderbilt work, and I'm sure at other schools where, you know, I think even like Chemi or BME, like they propose or take their quals like at the end of their 3rd year. And that's it. Like there's no variation in timeline. But yeah, like Mira said, that process is a little more individual. You know, it's your PhD thesis committee that you've chosen based on like your research field, and really it's kind of just like talking through, like you present your work and your proposed work to them, and then you talk through with them like how you're going to finish, and you know they give you feedback, and I mean it is like pass fail, but it's also just like kind of a conversation of like I think you're ready to move on, and these are the things like you need to do before you actually defend your dissertation.
And I think you have more than one shot, right? For both
Yeah,
prelim
I don't
and
think it's like
quals.
I don't think it's like you fail and then like you're out. It's like you fail because like you need to reevaluate what you're going to do, and then you come back and you're like, okay, now these are the things I'm actually going to do. But yeah, I don't like, you know, your PI is probably not going to let you propose or take the quals if you're not like ready. So I hope that answered the student's question.
Better answer than I could have given.
Yeah, no, good. I think that was a very comprehensive answer. And the student said, thank you. All right. I just I'm seeing the messaging come in. Nice. All right. So let's go back to the other question that we were previously talking about in terms of your future career plans. So we'll switch back and we'll go to the next person for that.
I guess, I mean, since I was just talking about how I'm graduating in the near-ish future, my current plan is to go to the industry side. So I would like to go work for a company that makes medical devices and surgical robots, and, you know, really get involved with the whole translation of some of the stuff I've been researching to like actual clinical patients.
For me, I also want to go to industry in the biotech side, a little different than Margaret in the microbiotech, I guess. But yeah, I think I would like to go back to Europe eventually. There is a big hub over there in the north of Europe. So I hope I can go there. But I don't know if this is the same experience for everybody, but as a PhD, you're just not, I mean, of course, you're focusing on a very small section of your area, right? But I think graduating with a PhD gives you the tools, the personal and professional tools to show that you've been able to learn a pretty difficult subject in a relatively short period of time. So given that, you can apply that to a lot of things. So I'm not personally planning on staying on the same field for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I agree. In my case, I think whatever I end up doing, I wanted to involve some form of research, because I still think that there's there's a lot of benefits that we can get from, like, exploring those fundamental concepts, and trying to create a new knowledge. So I think wherever I end up, I'd like to continue with research.
I flip flop on a weekly basis. I mean, I'm pretty fresh. I do like the idea of academia. I think specifically in STEM and mechanical engineering. Um, I only had like one or two undergrad professors that were female, so really getting to see that representation and having that representation is something that was meaningful to me. So this week I'm kind of more in that realm of I think I'd like to stay in academia, but I have time to change my mind.
All right. So a lot of diverse options out there. I mean, there's so much you can do with a graduate degree, and so I think a lot of people tend to think, well, with a PhD, you probably wind up going into academia, but there's a lot of other options out there besides just being in academia. There's industry, there's a whole bunch of other areas that can be applied to. So yes, I'm glad you highlighted that as well, the different options out there. So we have 4 minutes left. In the last 4 minutes, obviously we'll field any more questions that come in, but for the moment, what we'll do is I'm just going to open up the floor just for you to, any last words, any last thoughts that you'd want to share with the audience before we sign off. This would be the time to do so. So 4 minutes, all out for you. Yeah, go ahead.
I think one piece of advice that I like to reiterate with younger students is when choosing your lab, definitely look at the lab environment as we talked about, and then also just how it can be hard to kind of pick this up in just 1 or 2 meetings, but like how well do you mesh with your advisor? Because at the end of the day, that will make or break your research experience. And I tell people all the time, like, you will learn to love whatever you're researching because you get to dive so deep into it that you learn to love it. But if you don't have a good relationship with your advisor, you're going to be miserable. So that's definitely something to really like put emphasis on and really like think about. You're tying yourself to that person for a couple of years. So making sure that you guys see eye to eye and kind of have similar viewpoints on the big things.
I think doing a PhD has to be looked at as a personal investment. It's going to be 5, 4, 6 years of your life that are challenging. We've mentioned before, it's not a trivial thing. Sometimes you get lucky and you catch up the research from somebody else, but that's not usually the case. You have to spend a lot of hours. You have to be very consistent. But as I said, it's a personal investment in knowledge. If a person thinks that wants to push their limits, see how much they can improve in a pretty short period of time, that's the way to go. And if you give your best, regardless of how it ends up, I think that's the most important thing, how much you grow as a person and as a professional.
Yeah. Also, it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's, it takes some time. But like Alberto mentioned, like I have learned so much just being here and like gotten so much experience that I think is so valuable. But like to continue with the race analogy, it is a marathon, but the good thing about that is there is a clear finish line, like you will finish eventually and like it'll be really worth it, really satisfying. So, I mean, none of us have crossed it yet, but we'll all get there.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it is like getting a PhD is worth all the stress. At least I believe it will be worth all the stress. Yeah, fingers crossed. All the frustrations and everything, but that doesn't mean that you should just jump into it because you're looking for some sort of challenge in life, or if you want to do a PhD, you should have some sort of some form of certainty that this is the direction you want your life to go in. If you jump into it without really thinking about it, then yeah, it's definitely not something you want to take for granted. You have to
It's
like really think about it.
it's a labor of love. You know, you
That's
gotta
right.
you should love it, and if you're not loving it, you know, then you got to reevaluate.
Well, you
Yes.
will hate it at times, but that's true of anything that you do. You know, it's but yeah, I agree with what everyone said.
Yeah. Just love it so much that when you hate it, at least the love still overwhelms the hate.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you know, you can
there's
stick it
love
going.
deep in your heart.
Yes.
Dig deep.
It's not hate, it's frustration, you know, like we were talking about how like experiments never go as planned and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are at 8:01 here. So that is today's event. I want to, first of all, thank all of our panelists. Thank you, Emily, for putting this together. As I mentioned before, my contact information has been posted. So, and also if I'll be following up with those of you who registered in our system for this event. So we'll be in contact after today's event. I think, while we focused on programs, I also want everybody to know, in mechanical engineering, we also have master's programs too. So for those of you interested in the master's programs, we can also talk also about that as well. But no, I think, great perspectives you brought in. Obviously, you did an excellent job, as panelists. So I think, we had a very lively conversation, very informative. So thank you all. Stay safe. And we'll all be in contact. And next month, we'll have another session. So we're doing these live sessions once a month. So we'll be posting more information on our social media accounts about next month's event. So thank you again. Have a great evening. And all right, take care. Bye. Thank you.